Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
You want to go do a podcast?
Sure.
Jump in.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbies and Kens, Chelseas of all ages, and everyone else, welcome to Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and with me I have my wonderful co-host. He's not dead, he's just having an existential crisis. John.
Well, yeah. Like, what do we do now, man? We're at the end. This is the end. A whole
Yeah.
year's worth leading up to this. And now what?
For those of you just joining us, we are a podcast about Barbie movies, and this week we are finally giving our official review for Greta Gerwig's Barbie movie. Yeah, we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Quite the journey we've been on, and for this episode we're just going to be diving right into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, I suggest you do so before listening. But yeah, we want to be able to talk about the story and the characters without having to step around eggshells here.
Eggshells. Don't want to step on them.
Nope.
Nothing touching the feet, you know.
Flat feet. Blah. You are giving me a quizzical look.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Barbie. This is directed by Greta Gerwig, her fourth film as a director. We've covered all of her other films as well on this podcast. And written by Gerwig and her partner Noah Baumbach. We have cinematography by Rodrigo Prieto, who's sort of known for his collaborations with a bunch of different directors, but mainly Alejandro Iñárritu and Martin Scorsese on some of Scorsese's recent work. We have set design by Sarah Greenwood and costume design by Jacqueline Duran, who Gerwig worked with her on Little Women, actually, so they've worked together before. And we have music by a whole lot of people. The soundtrack is attributed to Mark Ronson and Andrew Wyatt, but there's also a whole bunch of original songs here, sung by pop artists and hip-hop artists and all different people. And yeah, the story is we're following stereotypical Barbie, played by Margot Robbie, who lives in Barbie Land. And it's the seeming utopia where every day is perfect and different variations of Barbie hold all of the positions of power. You know, there's President Barbie, there's journalist Barbie, lawyer Barbie, Supreme Court Barbie, etc., etc. And within this world, they are told that because of Barbie's success in the 1960s, in the real world, misogyny has completely been eliminated and women are completely equal because of Barbie. And we do have Kens existing in this Barbie land, but their main purpose is sort of really like I don't even know how to put it. Like their they don't
sole
have a
purpose is to be there for Barbie and to be noticed by Barbie.
Yeah. They're sort of like trying to get the Barbie's attention, but they don't really have anything besides that. Like they don't have jobs or anything. But yeah, during one of these nightly dance parties that they have, stereotypical Barbie starts having thoughts about death, which obviously in this perfect world where everyone is sort of eternal beings is not a thing that is supposed to happen. And she wakes up the next morning and things start going wrong. She wakes up feeling groggy, her shower is cold, her waffle is burnt, and her feet, which are usually arched, they go flat onto the ground. And so she is told to visit Weird Barbie, who tells her that a portal has opened to the real world and that somewhere in the real world, the girl who stereotypical Barbie belongs to is the one who's influencing all of these thoughts and all of these things that are going wrong. So Barbie heads off into the real world and Ken stows away with her. And this is kind of all stuff that we've seen in the trailers.
Yeah.
Once they get into the real world, Barbie is very horrified to experience misogyny, which she had assumed had been eliminated because of the influence of Barbie. And meanwhile, Ken is just having a great time, sort of experiencing the privileges of a patriarchal society. Um, and Mattel, sort of the company Mattel, which is an actual entity in this film,
Mm-hmm.
gets word that a Barbie has escaped. So they send a team out to find her. Barbie does find the girl who she belongs to, who is Sasha, who is extremely anti Barbie. She's like a high school student. And the encounter kind of shakes Barbie to her core because she realizes, oh, the real world isn't at all what I expected, and maybe Barbie is not this sort of utopian ideal. Mattel shows up to collect her, and she initially agrees to get back in her box, but changes her mind at the last minute. And Sasha's mother, Gloria, who's a Mattel employee, actually helps Barbie escape. And it turns out that it was actually Gloria, not Sasha, who had been playing with Barbie and leading to these sort of the thoughts of death and all of the things that have been going wrong for stereotypical Barbie. Meanwhile, Ken decides to take everything he's learned about patriarchy back to Barbie Land. So I'm forgetting the reason for this, but Barbie brings Gloria and Sasha back with her to Barbie Land. And when they get there, they discovered that the Kens have learned about patriarchy, and because of that, they have brainwashed most of the Barbies and taken over the power. They meet up with weird Barbie and a bunch of unaffected dolls, the like weird discontinued dolls. Like there's the Barbie that has a TV, Earring Ken, Magic Earring Ken, I think is
Something
his
like that.
official. Sugar's daddy. Um, and they're trying to deprogram one of the Barbies, which isn't going well until Gloria gives this big speech about the contradictions of being a woman in the world. And it's so moving and truthful that it breaks through the brainwashing. And so they form a plan to deprogram all of the Barbies and then distract the Kens by sort of making them jealous of each other. And they go into this all out war with each other using like hockey sticks and arrows, like the toy arrows. Um, so the Barbies are able to take back the power, and the board of Mattel, which has been kind of trying to get to Barbie Land to fix in the real world when the Kens took over, it changed all of the Barbie products into Ken products. So the
Mm-hmm.
Barbie Dream House became Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House, which is what Ken renamed the Dream House.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, the Mattel board offers to return everything to normal, but the Barbies decide that they actually want to make some changes to make a more equitable society for both Barbies and Kens. And then I think a little bit before this, but it kind of the arc of it fits better here. Stereotypical Barbie and Ken, they have this heart to heart, and she tells Ken that she's not really romantically interested in him and that they need to go their separate ways to figure out who they are as individuals. And then the ghost of Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie, shows up in Barbie Land and has a chat with stereotypical Barbie, who reveals that she wants to become human. Handler sort of shows her what it means to be human, and Barbie agrees to it. And the film ends with Barbie now going by the name Barbara, which is the real name of Ruth Handler's daughter, who the Barbie doll was named after.
Mm-hmm.
She shows up for a gynecologist appointment, sort of proving that she is now a human being. The end.
That's the film.
Yep. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of deconstruction and then reconstruction of Barbie.
Yeah. It yeah, it points at the history of Barbie, um going back towards this film really works if you know a lot about the toy line's history, what the purpose of the doll is, but then there's also the negative connotations with the doll, which they address the in here that Barbie is that stereotype that this is the figure that you're supposed to be, when in reality, it's her job, it's not the figure.
Yeah, there's that sort of like the dichotomy of the way Barbie has inspired people, and then also the way that Barbie has sort of influenced people to these sort of like very narrow-minded views of themselves and of
Mm-hmm.
women in society.
Sure, yeah.
And I've seen this movie compared a lot to the Lego movie, and I think that there are
Eh,
comparisons, but the big difference is that, you know, the Lego movie is a movie about Legos the product and like
sure.
what do you do with Legos, whereas this one, Barbie, is more about Barbie the brand and the wider context that Barbie exists in. Now Lego doesn't have as much of like a as much cultural baggage attached to it, but yeah, there is that
Right.
sort of difference between, if you're wondering like what what's the difference between the two, there is this sort of, they're approaching the legacy of the product in different ways.
Yeah, like the only main thing that those two are connected is that one, they're both a comedy. Barbie, some degree a comedy, is other degree something else. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But besides meta humor, it's based on a toy line. That's where it separates. Lego is just about, hey, this is Lego. This is like you're playing with Legos. Barbie's about existential crisis and other
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, like I think about the Lego movie to the closest comparison to this, but I don't want to put them together because they're two different films.
Yeah. And I think that is, not to diss on the Lego movie. I like the Lego movie a lot. And
Love it.
again, Lego doesn't have the same cultural baggage that Barbie has.
Mm-hmm.
But Barbie just deals head on with so many big ideas. We have these, and not in a way, because sometimes movies will be kind of cute about it. They'll try and be like, oh, well, this is a movie about feminism, but we're not going to use the vocabulary of feminism. We're going to kind of hide it so that no one sort of, so that we can kind of maybe sneak it by people. No, this movie is just like, hey, let's use the terms, let's
It's
point these things out.
it's pretty blunt about it too.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, this is what it is. Here's a monologue I'm gonna give you about it. Actually,
Yeah.
no, I'm gonna give you several monologues about it. It's like,
Which is
okay,
the Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach style. They do like monologues about these kinds of big philosophical ideas.
yeah. I don't know. Personally, I like it when it's more incorporated into the story than just let's stop and talk about it. And which that's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine, but there's a lot of moments to the point where by the time we got to the Ruth Handler moment in the end, I was just like, okay, here's another monologue. Here you go.
Yeah. I feel that a little bit. For me, I liked a lot of the monologues, and especially the monologue that America Ferrera's character has, Gloria, the big monologue she has at like the end of the second act, or right about then,
Yeah.
about the contradictions of being a woman. I love that that is then, rather than the Barbies going to war with the kids, no, they're using this monologue, they're using words to inspire this sort of uprising that ends up leading to a better society. Because yeah, normally a blockbuster like this, you have a big action scene at the end, and this does have a big action scene at the end, but it's not, that's not the focus of it.
Right. It's almost a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's just a comedic piece to have
Yeah. I,
to
I would say it is a good waste of time. But yeah, you don't need that battle sequence there. You could have the Kens be distracted by anything else, but you know, you want to get your big action scene, but also have the actual resolution of the story be something more profound.
sure. Yeah, just taking this story at its bare bones, just the basic plots, just not including the main message. There's just the adventure that she goes on. It's a very weak baseline that if you take out all the characters, the comedy, the main message, it's just not compelling. And so by the time that we got to that final fight sequence, I noticed that it was like, oh wait, what is this? It's just it's wasting my time. It's like what? Okay, I don't know. I wasn't connecting to the ending as much as I was the opening.
Yeah,
Like
that's
the
interesting.
novelty of what they were doing just wore off for me.
Okay. I had a somewhat opposite thing where the first hour or so was just so jam packed with stuff that I was like, it's moving a mile a minute. It's introducing these new ideas. It kind of like, okay, here's a new idea. We're going to not deal with that right now. Here's another new idea. We're not going to deal with that right now.
Yeah, and
And so,
that's another problematic idea. Is like they're setting up a bunch of interesting ideas, but they're not doing much with it. Like Mattel.
well, yeah, for
Mat-
me, everything but the Mattel, I think, came back in a way that I really appreciated. And I loved the second half of the movie where everything's kind of connecting back together.
Sure.
But yeah,
Mattel
the
is the
Mattel stuff.
biggest flaw. That's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's a very interesting idea, but they're kind of forgotten in the third
Not
act.
not even forgotten, they're let off the hook. Because it's like for the first two acts of the movie, well, especially the first act of the movie, it's all like Mattel is kind of the antagonist,
Sure, yeah.
and they're, the characters are pointing out these very big problems with Mattel as a company, and then when it actually comes to like the resolution of the plot, it's just like, and then the Mattel people just did whatever they wanted.
Right, yeah.
This is ultimately, the Mattel logo plays in front of this movie. This is a Mattel movie as much as it is a Greta Gerwig movie or a Warner Brothers movie. This is a
Right.
Mattel movie.
Yeah.
I do think I somewhat agree with you that the basic plot structure is not as strong as it could have been. Um, but for me, it's like there are so many, because it is taking this sort of stereotypical hero's journey.
Mhm.
Um, but then in the second half, it adds in this new element where it's no longer just stereotypical Barbie story. It's now the story of this community having to deal with this issue and come together and create a solution together. Where we even move away from for quite a bit of the ending, it's not really focused on stereotypical Barbie.
Mhm.
But yeah, there are elements there where, it is taking a very sort of the hero's journey. It's playing it rather normal for the first half, and then there are definitely story elements that maybe could have been tied back a bit better.
Sure. Yeah.
But for me, the comedy was good enough and the message was strong and thought provoking enough that it didn't bother me as much.
Mm. I don't know. I wasn't fully compelled. And it could just be that I'm a guy. I don't connect to the same struggles. But just from a story aspect, I was kind of getting disinterested by the second part because it's like, okay, why are the Barbies brainwashed? How did that happen?
Yeah, we'll have to
Things kind
address
of get
that.
solved kind of easily as well.
Yeah.
It's like, do the Kens really not have anything to do? Like, surely Ken's had at least one position at one point. At least all the Kens that we've experienced through all the films have some kind of aspiration besides
Yeah.
Barbie.
Yeah, that is, I think it's interesting that after watching all of these animated Barbie movies, this has almost nothing to do with those.
I know, I know. There like wasn't even like a reference. There's like no Bibble poster in the background. It's like,
There's one direct reference. There's in the credits. There's a mermaid power
but
reference.
that's the toy line, not the film. I saw that. It's like, oh, well, that's the closest thing, but that's just the toy.
Yeah, but yeah, this is and when you think about it, it makes sense because this is Greta Gerwig who grew up with Barbie the doll, but probably not Barbie the animated movies. That's a little bit
Sure,
after her time.
sure, but you'd think you'd do a little bit more research on the toy line and see. It's like, wow, there are 40 some animated films.
I mean, yeah, I kind of wouldn't be surprised if they just didn't want to even touch the movies.
20
And
years.
even at like 2 hours long, and this is already really crammed full of ideas.
You could have just have an animated Barbie be one of the Barbies in the town.
That would have
I
been,
mean,
yeah.
just,
I've said
just
that
that would have
before. I
been
kind of,
fine.
yeah, they should have had some kind of,
Not even America Young, the current Barbie. At least
yeah,
that I know of. At least that I know
yeah.
of.
That is true. I don't know
They
that
could
I
have
would,
hidden them in the voices in the
yeah,
background. One of those "Hi Barbie" moments in the beginning. Who knows?
yeah. There were definitely, but again, like it's so crammed full of ideas that I kind of think there might just not have been time for that kind of.
Yeah, probably. My favorite moments of the film is the meta idea of the toy line itself. Even like the cutaway jokes, like when they had that commercial in the middle of the film about
Yes.
existential Barbie. Uh, that's probably my favorite part of the film.
Oh yeah, that
But
was great.
for me, the comedy could also be very hit or miss. Because I had
Okay.
mentioned this. I had mentioned this when we talked about the trailer, that
Yeah.
there were some cheap jokes. Most of them were innuendo based that I don't love. I think they're cheap, and so there's several of those in this. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But
I
there are some really clever ones as well.
yeah.
The ones that actually have to do with Barbie as a toy line, as a character, that works. But just your basic, what do we do now? I don't know. Just here's a basic 101 joke to add. Okay.
I'm curious to hear because my audience that I was with was really engaged with it, and like every joke got a laugh. There were moments where people cheered after the big monologue that Gloria does. People were clapping.
Well, we didn't have that, you know, or
Yeah.
it wasn't as full as a theater, but it was like it was a decent sized theater
Yeah.
filling that we had. I went to the 3 o'clock, the earliest possible showing on the East Coast you can go to. And I want to say like almost half the theater was filled.
Okay.
A lot of them wearing pink.
Yep.
Um, None of the children laughed.
Okay.
Uh,
I don't know that we had children in my audience.
yeah. Um, that was like one thing. I was like, oh man, people are bringing their children. Oh, they're not going to enjoy this film. So yeah, none of the children laughed. The
Hmm.
adults chuckled from time to time. Like some of the outlandish jokes when we had the different Barbie references, toy lines.
Yeah.
That's when they joke. Like Sugar Daddy Ken, uh, the Barbie with the aging Barbie toy.
The
Or is it Skipper?
grown up skipper?
Grown up
Yeah.
Skipper. Yes,
I can't
stuff like
believe.
that got the most laugh.
Okay.
But overall, it was just a chuckle here, chuckle there.
Yeah. That's interesting because yeah, my audience was like 110% on board. Like I'm surprised there weren't any standing ovations. That was how much people were engaged with this. I think the joke that got the most, well, the two things. The first one was the with the existential or
Yeah.
like depression Barbie, the
Hmm.
watching BBC Pride and Prejudice. That
Hmm.
one, which my dad is a big fan of that one, and he went to
Yeah.
see it with me, and so I looked over at him, and he enjoyed that moment. And then the whole thing with the when the Barbies are distracting the Kens, but especially the guitar where it's Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling on the beach and he's playing the guitar at her.
Sure.
And then it pulls out and reveals that it's all the Kens are doing it for all of the Barbies.
Mm-hmm.
It, just such a good
Yeah.
moment.
Ken probably got the most laughs in our
That
audience.
makes sense.
Um, yeah, Ken is ridiculous. We'll talk about Ken.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, I was talking to someone that I knew who went to the show and was like,
yeah,
hey. And he was talking about that he really liked the scene at the bus stop when Barbie was just talking to the older lady.
yeah.
I'm just wondering if that older lady is supposed to be someone
So
part of
that's
Barbara's history.
that is. Oh, I had her name here. Just a second. So that is Anne Roth, who is a really famous costume designer.
Yeah, yeah, she did some work for Barbie toys, didn't she? I'm
She
pretty
might have.
sure. I think so. If I'm remembering the couple documentaries about Barbie that
Okay.
I think Anne Roth is a name that if she's not one of the main designers for the toy dresses, she did design a couple.
Yeah, and she did work on White Noise, the previous Noah Baumbach film, which I talked about on this podcast. But she's done work for so many films.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if she also just has like a personal connection with Barbie. I would not be surprised if most costume designers in Hollywood have some connection with Barbie as like when they were kids, that's how you get into fashion often
Sure.
is
Yeah.
designing dresses for dolls, which is why I kind of sidetrack a little bit, but I think this is going to win the best costume design Oscar for that specific reason.
Sure. I guess.
But yeah, the moment with Anne Roth on the bench, that's a really sweet moment.
Hmm.
And sort of Barbie, who has lived her entire life in this land where there's no old people. She doesn't know what old people look like, but having this sort of realization of, and now that I think about it, it's kind of hitting me. That's her moment of realizing, oh, I kind of want to have the opportunity to grow old and not be stuck living the same perfect day over and over again.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because yeah, I do think, um, not to jump down to characters too early, but I do think one of my issues with the movie is that the last decision that stereotypical Barbie makes to become human, there isn't enough explanation for why she chooses that.
Right. Yeah.
But that
It,
moment on the bench that your friend pointed out, that I feel like if I were to rewatch this, I could maybe track an arc starting from that point.
yeah. Because just on this first viewing, when she decides to become human, I'm just kind of like, oh, is that where we're going? I
Yeah,
guess maybe. Sure. It kind of makes sense. I don't know. I'm done
yeah.
with it. It's over. Here we go. Whatever.
Well, yeah, we could move on to characters. I give the story a 4.5 out of 5. I think some of the issues that we brought up with the story are there, but I mean, the comedy and the philosophy of this are so engaging that I just had a wonderful time.
Yeah. But I gave the story a 3. It's also a thing to point out for you if you were just watching our podcast this entire time. I'm not rating these in comparison to other Barbie films. This is just my general thoughts about films in general. How
Yeah,
I
we,
think
we
about
aren't
this.
grading this on the same curve we grade
Right.
the other animated Barbie movies, because this
Yeah.
is a Hollywood production with a ton of resources behind it, with artists who have the freedom to do what they want within certain limits, but not the same limits that the animated films have.
Yeah, I prefer something just a little bit more straightforward of a story. Um, you could probably gather that from just the other podcasts we've done, because story for me can make or break a film.
Yeah.
So I just wasn't as connected as you were to this story.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Doesn't necessarily surprise me based on our different tastes in media.
Right? Yeah.
Now, onto the characters. First up, I
Characters.
have stereotypical Barbie,
Hmm.
the main Barbie here. She's experiencing a bit of a coming of age here, which is interesting because Greta Gerwig's previous films have been coming of age films. But this isn't like a teenager becoming an adult, but instead an adult becoming an older adult, where it's sort of like, because her arc is tied to America Ferrera, who is raising a teenager and sort of confronting the like, I used to be close with my daughter, but now I'm not, and confronting these ideas about existence and about death, and then these paradoxes that exist in the world, and these inequalities that she experiences. And then that's what stereotypical Barbie is now experiencing as she journeys into the real world, is sort of this,
Hmm.
her perfect view of the world falling away and having to confront imperfection.
Yeah. No. She. The idea of the stereotypical Barbie just seemed interesting. Worked
Yeah.
really well as well. Um, I do wish though Margot played more than one Barbie, but from what they were doing with the story, I understand that just have one. But I've already said this in the trailer or just the poster discussion, in that it makes more sense to have Margot play more than one Barbie, because most of those Barbies are the same base model with those jobs as well.
Hmm.
It's not until recently where they've changed like hairstyles and ethnicities as well, body shapes as well.
Yeah. I appreciate the diversity of the supporting cast here, and I think that was the main consideration there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it too, but I do think there should be more stereotypical Barbies in this.
Yeah.
Where's our
And
Stacy and Chelsea?
okay, Skipper shows up and Midge shows up,
Skipper
and
and Midge,
there's
yeah,
references to Chelsea and Nikki and Teresa in the end credits.
in the end credits, yeah, like no mention in the film. Like there's Stacy toys, there's Chelsea toys. Like they're more recent, but still, I get
Yeah.
it.
It is sort of the mechanics of some of this, like how apparently all of these Barbies are being played with by a specific girl. I don't know. I feel like we could get caught up in the lore of it, but I kind of don't want to.
It will become problematic, because if
Yeah.
that's what's happening, why the sudden change in character with the brainwashing? I don't think little girls are buying the Ken dolls and making that happen to their Barbie dolls.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I feel like it's like the problem with the Toy Story movies, where if you think about it too much, it all collapses, because the logic is like, there's a logic to it that is makes sense within the boundaries of those movies, but once you try and go beyond those boundaries, it kind of doesn't make sense anymore.
Sure.
But it's not to the extent of like Cars, where Cars just doesn't make sense even while you're watching the movie. This is less than like,
There's a suspension of disbelief you need to
yes,
have. These
yes.
cars are driving themselves, people. I guess they have children. I guess there's a car pope, uh,
The
a
car
tow
pope who
mater,
rides in the Pope mobile, which implies that at one point someone tried to assassinate the car pope.
right? There's a body count. Uh, but
At one point, people have a scene that takes place inside of an airplane that is a sentient being.
yes.
And then in the Planes movie, not to get too far off track, in the second Planes movie, I haven't seen the full thing, but I saw the first little bit. The plane has engine troubles and they've discontinued the part, which means in this world, they could just discontinue the part and you will eventually die.
I mean, that's kind of Lightning's story in the third film.
It just, it's the logic just no, it doesn't work. Here though, I think the logic works within the boundaries of the movie, but then when you start kind of thinking about it too much, it
I mean, it works for the first act. Once you get into the Ken Overlord plot, then things start to
well, yeah.
become questionable.
That's when the thing reverses, when Barbie Land is now influencing the real world.
Maybe that was the case all along.
Maybe it was.
I don't. I don't know. Does it matter? No,
No,
that's not
yeah.
the main point.
I do think we already talked a bit about this, but the way the movie kind of loses track of stereotypical Barbie's arc in the second half, where it's like, as we were just saying, we don't really understand why she decides to become human, and maybe there's something there that will show up on subsequent viewings.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. This is the type of film that I can rewatch. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I will probably rewatch it, and if I come across something, I'll let you know. But
Okay.
yeah, it is, part of me is like, because with these Greta Gerwig films, they're so dense, and especially this one where so much is happening, that it's entirely possible that there is an arc there that you can follow the entire way through, be like, okay, yeah, it makes sense now that you know the beginning and the end point, you can follow all of the steps along the way. Or it could just be one of those things that it's like the movie has tried to do so many things that it's like it loses track of that character for a little bit. But yeah, I think stereotypical Barbie as a character works really well as the protagonist here.
Yeah.
Now, next up we have Ken, who's kind of
Oh boy.
the star of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the main comedic force outside of the
Yeah.
meta, but Ken.
He has an interesting arc here
I mean, kinda.
where, because at the start of the movie, we do see sort of the inequality of Barbie Land that he's existing in. And then he goes into the real world and experiences this sort of opposite inequality.
Sure.
Um, and then that inspires him to go back to Barbie Land and then try and recreate that opposite inequality. But then he has to learn that no, actually, let's find a middle ground between the two rather than.
I don't think the middle ground part really worked as well. It was kind of
Yeah.
rushed at the end.
I think that's supposed to be more of. I think the movie isn't trying to provide answers so much as. This is something my sister Emma said on the last podcast. The movie's trying to point out issues more than it is trying to provide solutions.
Hmm. Ken is dumb, and it
He
kind of
is,
made
but
me sad that he was just so dumb.
I
Like,
think it's a bit endearing.
sure, like in the first half, I was like, yeah, he's kind of endearing, but by the second half, I'm like, Ken's just dumb, especially in his redemption moment. He's just oh boy. I mean, Ryan Gosling performed the heck out of him, but like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh man, what did they do to Ken?
I feel like that might be an important part of his arc here because they do want to redeem him. And so if he's smart, that makes a lot of his actions so much more threatening.
Ken is me. Ah, boy, just I don't know. That's one part where the film just started losing me. It's like, oh boy, they're not smart, man.
Yeah,
Where's what happened to the endearing Ken?
yeah. I do miss the the fashion fairy tale, which is also a character who isn't the smartest, but he's like in
Yeah,
more of like as you're saying, a more endearing way.
but like when Barbie is talking to Ken about something serious, I really wanted Ken to just really accept it than just dumbly breaking down and Ken is me. I wanted
Well,
more from Ken with that.
I think that is his acceptance of it.
I don't know. It's sure, yeah, I get that, but it just didn't come off really well to me. It
Okay.
just came off. It's like, okay, comedy versus sincerity.
Mm,
That's where you try to mix the two, but like the comedy is always going to come out in front, and that's where you
yeah.
lose your sincerity. And for me, I'm like, oh, Ken, no, you're just a joke.
Yeah.
In the most important part of the film, you're just a joke.
Yeah. I felt a little bit more sincerity there. I think the part that is sort of the most interesting is this moment where he realizes that he needs to find who he is, his own identity separate from Barbie. And I think that is something that there are men out there who tie their self-worth to their romantic partners,
Hmm.
either to their romantic partner like as an individual or even to the idea of having a romantic partner. um, and that's something that's sort of societal, and I think we've talked about it before with sort of the expectation that people marry, and like that being presented as the reward at the end of a film. um, and then sort of that makes people think, oh, if I do good, then I deserve a relationship.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, it's addressing that, but then it's also acknowledging that within certain parts of the feminist movement there needs to be a bit more consciousness of the issues that men face, and about providing space for men to figure out what positive versus negative masculinity, what does that look like,
Hmm.
rather than, because feminism obviously is very focused on women, as it should be, but you can kind of lose sight, and hopefully there is some way to be both advocating for women while also not casting men to the side. That's kind of the message of the movie, I think, but sort of presented in a more comedic and satirical way. Yeah, he does get a redemption arc, as you were saying, kind of played for comedy.
Hmm.
I think it's very important that throughout the film he's never presented as a physical danger, and then also that he isn't like, he isn't really the villain here. Like, he's an antagonist, but the movie isn't trying to villainize him, because he does get that redemption arc and there is more going on under the surface,
Hmm.
which is something that I've always appreciated about Gerwig's writing, that she resists the easy villainization of people. But yeah, anyway, on to I've lumped the other Barbies all together here because there's a lot of sort of fun little bits, but we never get much a sense for who any of them are as individuals.
Yeah.
They're just kind of the other Barbies.
Yeah, the only other Barbie that really stands out is Weird Barbie.
Yes, which I do think I have her further down. Maybe not,
No.
but yeah, she's the only one that really has a distinctive personality.
Hmm.
Which, yeah, I think that is maybe one of the things where I was a little bit disappointed, having seen Gerwig's other films and how much he invests in the supporting characters. And here we do have a lot of supporting characters who get investment, but it's not the other Barbies or the other Kens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because the other Barbies they kind of they're not really important because you forget about them when we go
Yeah,
to the real world, and then they come back, but like they're all changed except for
yeah,
the weird one, so you don't really think of them as important, really.
yeah. And that you brought up the brainwashing before as sort of an issue, and for me, I have mixed feelings about it because it you need it there for the plot to work, and it leads to some of my favorite moments. But it also makes the Barbies seem so much less smart than they should be.
Yeah, almost as shallow as the Kens, which they're
Yeah.
not.
Well, I think neither the Kens nor the Barbies are as shallow as that. But yeah, it's just one of those things that like it has to happen for the plot,
Hmm.
but the mechanics of it.
We didn't have any fairy Barbies.
We did have mermaid Barbies.
We had mermaid Barbies, just yeah, but like no fairies. Like there's a lot of fairy Barbie toys, but none of them here.
Yeah.
Like just take out the whole Fairytopia concept. Just fairy Barbie in general, or princess Barbie.
There was a Princess Barbie
Eh,
listed in the credits.
well, background, uh, but still,
Yeah. One of the things I do like about the other Barbies is the to go back to the brainwashing thing. It reminded me a bit. Have you seen Gone Girl or read the book?
I have not. No.
Okay. There's a monologue in it that's very famous called the Cool Girl monologue. And the point of this monologue is um, a character, I won't spoil who, is talking about the way that as a woman, she has felt the need to play a role to be with her romantic partner. So, if her romantic partner is into football, then she has to be into football. Or if he's into like a certain type of woman, then she has to diet and exercise and keep her body at a certain weight in order to please her partner. And the monologue is sort of this thing of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Um, and then here we get sort of like a visualization of that with the Barbies sort of doing what the kids want them to do, sort of suppressing their own personalities to be essentially accessories to the Kens. And then even once they do the once they deprogram the Barbies, then it becomes sort of a weapon for them, where they can use it as a tool to take back power. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting connection. It's probably more interesting if you have seen Gone Girl.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that idea of like, and then even that you don't necessarily know that it's happening because it's so socially expected. So yeah, I like that moment there, or I guess that's a series of moments. But yeah, speaking of that, on the other half of the moments, we have the Kens,
Hmm.
who again they don't get much individuality. We do have the Simu Liu Ken gets a little bit more to do. He's sort of Ryan Gosling Ken's
Yeah.
rival, but there isn't much characterization even for him.
Yeah. they don't really have much individuality except for Mermaid Ken.
John Cena
Yeah, but
is
like besides that, they're all kind of the same. They do the
yeah,
exact same thing.
yeah. And I did find myself kind of wishing, since there's so much variation in the Barbies, I kind of would have, and I guess that's the point of the movie is, these Kens haven't been permitted to be individuals.
Unless he's a lifeguard.
Yeah, the one Ken that's the lifeguard. That's, I think, Kingsley Benadier. He's been the in Secret Invasion recently.
Hmm.
But yeah, I do. Again, I love that the whole sequence of the deprogramming all of the brainwashed Barbies, and I think it's a real teaching moment for people watching, especially the men watching. That like there are just certain things you should avoid. Like, I know I felt a little bit called out by the watching The Godfather and explaining, talking through the whole thing. Which, I mean, we're a podcast. We talk about movies. That's our whole bread and butter here.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and I think there's a difference between like showing someone a movie that you love because you want to spend time with them and you want them to experience it, versus what I think the film is calling out is showing someone you love a movie so that you can tell them about it to show them how smart you are. I think
Sure.
that's more what the
Mm-hmm.
film is calling out. But there is like, sometimes I do have to remind myself when I'm watching a movie with people, okay, I don't need to explain everything. These people can figure it out for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think? Well, we're kind of adjacent to that of the Zack Snyder reference.
Oh, that one had me laughing. I don't remember what was the context of that
It's
joke.
right after the Alexandra ship Barbie has been deprogrammed, and she says something like, I feel like I was in a dream where for some reason I needed to care about the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League.
Love it. I really care about that cut.
Yep.
So,
I knew that that would get some kind of reaction out of you
oh yeah, no, that
when
was
I
really
heard of
funny.
it. And I had
Yeah,
heard
I mean
whispers
Warner
online.
Brothers has just been trying to bury that film. So,
Yeah. And the way it's brought up is a little bit dismissive and
right.
maybe a bit unfair to it, though I don't think,
It's
I
not
think
not,
it's
not
calling out,
really.
the fan behavior around the movie.
Yes, because there has been some problematic
Yeah.
things with the fans, but yeah, no, that was just I loved that bit. Just came out of nowhere. It's like, huh?
Yeah, no, I had seen online people are saying there's a Snyder Cut reference, and I'm like, what is it, like something that is like people are seeing it and misinterpreting it, like just a coincidence? No, it's like actually referenced the title.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Next up on the character list, I have Gloria,
Gloria.
who she was my favorite character in the whole movie. She's the entire impetus for the plot because she's the one who starts playing with Barbie and then starts drawing the like thoughts of death Barbie
Mm-hmm.
and existential Barbie. Um, and there's depth to her character that I think will stand out more on subsequent watches because she's sort of longing for this connection she once had with her daughter that they had through Barbie. And she goes back to Barbie to try and like the nostalgia of it to try and find that connection again, but doesn't. That leads to sort of this existential crisis. But then she's like genuinely overjoyed to meet Barbie and to go
Mm-hmm.
to Barbie Land.
Yeah.
and leads to her becoming somewhat of a leader. And she has that big monologue, which I really appreciated that monologue. It moved me more than I was expecting anything in this movie to move
Mm.
me.
There's not really a whole lot of an ending for her and Sasha, because
Yeah.
after um the Ruth Handler moment, they I don't think we go back to them.
No, and I think the idea is that at a certain point we've gotten the resolution for them where, because there is a moment where they connect. I think it's specifically in the car as they're driving away and then they
Hmm.
decide to turn back, where Sasha realizes, sort of sees her mom for who she is. And then especially after the monologue of like realizing, oh, my mom is like also has her own struggles and her own feelings. But yeah, that is for how important their characters are. They do kind of disappear at a certain point.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff is kind of symptoms of a runtime that is maybe shorter than it could have been.
Right.
Which personally, a lot of movies have been like, the last Indiana Jones was 2.5 hours. Didn't need to be 2.5 hours. So I appreciate when movies appreciate my time. Um, we'll eventually talk about Oppenheimer to tease a future episode, maybe coming out later today.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
that
it could
that
also
worked for
be
me.
problematic though
Yeah,
to cut down a film
yeah,
like Love and Thunder, which
yeah.
was apparently really really long for
But yeah,
some reason.
to me, this doesn't feel like
No.
they. I don't think there's a secret Gerwig cut of this
No.
that fixes all of these issues. I think that's just as they were writing this, they were trimming as much out of it as they could, which is how Gerwig wrote Lady Bird. She actually, her original screenplay was, I think, 300 or 400 pages long, and then she just aggressively cut out a whole bunch of stuff.
Hmm.
And kind of here she takes the same approach, though maybe she cut a little bit too much.
Maybe there's Mattel interference. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for like the Gloria and Sasha stuff, I think that's probably more less a Mattel thing. With how the Mattel stuff ends, I think that's more Mattel coming in and saying, "Oh, we can't come off as the bad guys at the end of this." Which, speaking of Mattel, there's a very interesting characterization of them here, which we have already kind of touched on,
Yeah, interesting.
where the movie starts out very, very critical of them. Like
Sure.
the things that they get called out for, rightfully so.
Hmm.
But then by the end of it, they haven't actually addressed any of those issues, and yet Mattel, the characters for that just kind of go off and it's all fine. We
Yeah.
even have Gloria as the Mattel employee, the good Mattel employee.
Hmm. But like, yeah, like knowing more about uh the Barbie as a toy line, Mattel is a bit unrealistic because the people in charge they don't make up the toys. It's other people.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
group
the
of women.
artist.
It's the group of women that
Yeah.
do this. The Mattel they just sell the product, and so I don't know. Just see, I don't know. I was kind of like, huh, what? That's not true at all. Like just that one person. There's like 100 women. What are you talking about? But I understand the point they were making. I was just like, well, that's not true at all. I've seen.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I,
like yeah, I get what they're referencing. It was very much the truth back, very much the truth back in like when Barbie was first starting. The people who were disapproving of the design were all men.
yeah.
Um, Today, I don't know. They're probably the ones in charge, but they approve everything. Which maybe
Yeah.
that's what they're doing here, is that they're
Yeah.
just approving things.
Yeah, because I think the board, that's who we're seeing mainly is the
Mm.
board. And then we have Gloria is like the secretary, and then we have Connor Swindles, I think is his name, who's like an intern. We don't ever really see the like actual people who are creating the Barbies.
I wish we saw them though.
Yeah. We do see Ruth Handler, but
I mean,
yeah.
she's dead, but
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
yeah, it
yeah.
might be that might have been, speaking of interesting cameos, having cameos from actual people who design Barbie dolls.
I mean, yeah, that that would have been interesting. Maybe they're in the background somewhere, but
Yep. Yeah, it is an interesting depiction of Mattel that is like critical but not critical enough to encourage people to not buy Barbies.
I had no idea. Like, what am I supposed to feel about Mattel? Because halfway through, they're like, "We're doing this for the little girls." Like,
Yeah,
it's like they know that the Ken stuff is wrong. It's like,
which
wait,
they toss off as a joke.
yeah,
But because yeah, it's for context, it's a scene where Will Ferrell and the entire board are roller skating to the portal to get to Barbie Land to fix everything. Someone's like, but the numbers for the Ken products are through the roof. We're selling really well. And he's like, no, we are doing this because we care about the little girls. Which I thought was a joke, but no, that's just apparently their actual motivation.
yeah. No, the Mattel stuff was really weird. Like, I didn't know
I
like what we're doing with them.
here's
So
here's what just occurred to me. I wonder if there's something hidden, like if Gerwig is trying to slide something by that's like subtle enough that you don't get it on a first viewing but would show up more later.
maybe. I mean, we'll have to watch some documentaries, see if that changes
Yeah.
our perspectives.
Yeah. Now I did want to talk about one more character here, Alan.
Alan,
He's just so sweet.
he's kind of thrown aside though.
Yeah, no, I feel bad for him because he doesn't get a good ending here.
He
He's
beats
more
up a
known
bunch
for
of Kens,
comedy.
and then that's it for him.
Yeah. But he was just, the scenes where he got to show up and do stuff were just so
Mm,
good.
yeah.
And I almost feel like there's a version of this, like where he ends up in the real world and like leaving Barbie Land because he obviously doesn't like it there.
Yeah, I mean, especially when the Kens were dominating.
Yeah. Which I really like that because it's sort of this acknowledgement that patriarchy doesn't benefit all men. Which is also, we have the magic earring Ken and
Hmm.
Sugar's daddy Ken, who are sort of more the queer coded men. But that is patriarchy disadvantages queer men, not to the same extent as it disadvantages women, but for often similar reasons, for the sort of fear of femininity or hatred of femininity or whatever,
Hmm.
for these like defined gender roles and expectation that men act in masculine ways. So I do like having Alan as sort of this counterpoint to sort of the hashtag, well, I guess he's not a Ken, but hashtag not all Ken character. But yeah, overall I gave the characters a 4.5 out of 5. Just really solid all around. I think again the characterization of Mattel and maybe some of the supporting characters could have gotten a little bit more. Also, this is a movie that, even if it isn't as restricted as the animated movies, it still exists within certain restrictions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah. So next up, we have the visuals.
Barbie Land is so much fun to
Oh
look at.
yeah. I feel kind of desensitized to it because of all of the trailers and marketing material, but
Definitely for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that every trailer and marketing material has Barbie Land in it. It's because that is the most visually astounding part of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a toy. It looks like an
Yeah.
actual toy. The water is fake. Uh,
Yeah. The giant brush, and then it's not there aren't objects in the fridge, it's just the sticker on the back.
the seagulls.
Oh,
What I love is like the traveling shots from a
oh yeah.
distance. They just put dolls on a car and just let them move on.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't catch that.
Oh yeah. I saw. I noticed. It's like, is that a doll? It's like, I think that's a doll.
Oh.
It's like even they even had dolls for Gloria and Sasha when they were coming in.
Oh,
Um,
that's
like
cool.
they have a close up, but then they have a far away shot. I'm pretty sure that's just a doll going across if it's not CGI.
Wow.
They're made to look like dolls. It's like, wow, it's fun.
Yeah. No, the visuals here are just so incredible
Mm-hmm.
for Barbie Land, and the
For Barbie Land.
costumes. Like even the bad costumes are great. Like Ken's big fur coat is so ostentatious, and
I mean, I don't know if I loved any of the costumes, but like they got the whole toy thing going for them, so
yeah.
I understood that. Uh, Ken's, I don't know. There was a lot of great costumes for Ken's. I mean, that's the point.
Yeah, the cowboy outfit with like the fringe and the
Sure.
that was a great outfit.
Most of our main Ken was just him showing off his abs. Like he never really had anything buttoned down. It was just like he has to show his abs.
Yeah, that's definitely. Now, I do think we do have to talk about here the real world stuff. It isn't quite as exciting, and obviously, there's a reason for that.
Of
They're
course.
trying to make it visually distinct.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still just a little bit disappointed by how I think it was Bethany on the last podcast pointed out like the car chase looks like it could have been a car commercial.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
just kind of generically lit, generically shot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have made it as cartoony bleak as possible. Like Back to the
Yeah,
Future, when we go to the bleak side of things, like they make fun of it. They have a lot of fun with the how they design it. Here it's just like, okay, this looks basic. Maybe that's the point, but like
yeah.
still you can make it look interesting.
Yeah, I feel like you don't even need to do anything with like the visual style of it, but just have a more dynamic camera and more interesting camera angles and more interesting lighting.
You can
It
just
felt
make the whole thing more absurd as possible.
well. I think they're trying to make the real world as close to our world as possible to kind of point out the differences.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's just like they could have done that, but in a way that looked more interesting than lightly desaturated car commercial.
Yeah, I forgot there's a car chase. I mean,
It's not
it
it's
was
barely a
not
car
impressive.
chase.
Yeah.
I think
I don't know how the mom is doing what she's doing, but
well she references that she used to
I
hang
mean,
around with.
still, still, yeah.
Yeah.
Just the real world just was not as impressive looking.
Yeah. Which I think,
is the point.
well, not only that, but I think because I was worried when 20 minutes in they're in the real world. I was
Hmm.
like, oh no, is this going to be, this is a 2 hour movie. Are we going to spend 20 minutes at the beginning in Barbie Land, then an hour and a half in the real world, and then 10 minutes in the end in Barbie Land? No, it's like 30 minutes in the real world, and then they go
Sure.
back to Barbie Land. Um, so I think I will forgive some of the real world stuff because it is a small part,
Mm-hmm.
and they get back to Barbie Land as soon as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I gave the visuals a 4.8 out of 5. I wanted to give it a 5, but again, the real world stuff, I think they could have done something more
Mm-hmm.
without. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave it a 4. The Barbie Land looks great, but there's obviously a lot more that they could do to make it stand out more.
So yeah, next up we have the performances,
Oh boy, yeah,
which Ken's across the board, in my opinion.
yeah. I mean, it playing dumb is
Oh,
so much
I meant
fun.
instead of tens across the board.
Oh, okay.
Not just Ken is, I
But
think, the best performance,
still,
but
Ryan Gosling as Ken, just he's funny and dumb, but like a happy dumb.
yeah, he's having a great time and he's so committed. And I think it may have broken his brain. Have you read any recent interviews with him?
I I heard that something that he's like so that this film changed his life or something. I don't know.
He's in interviews, obviously not now because there's the
Right,
SAG
right.
AFTRA strike, but before that was going on, there were just like the way he was talking as if he was Ken,
Hmm.
like he had gone too method, but instead of like he's gone too method and now he's like treating everyone terribly, it's just no, he's gone too method and now he is Ken.
I mean, Ken.
He said he's had trouble like leaving the character behind, and I think part of it might just be he's playing it up for like the marketing, but it is just kind of funny to hear, especially once you see the performance and it's like, oh no, he is 110% committed here.
Sure,
He
which is
knows what he needs to do and he is doing it so perfectly.
it is very problematic in the acting community, of course. Um, but that's a whole other debate and discussion method.
Oh,
Ugh.
I don't think he was actually going method, just
Right, but still.
yeah, no, method is that is a can of worms we don't need to get into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
next up we have Margot Robbie as Barbie,
Yes.
who she's been getting less attention, but I think she is just as committed as Ryan Gosling here.
Yeah. No, she's good.
She has a little bit more emotional depth to her,
Mm-hmm.
which I think makes it feel a little different from Ryan Gosling as Ken, who is sort of playing it so broad and silly in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Margot Robbie has to sell some emotional moments. And yeah, the line where they acknowledge that, because Margot Robbie has a scene where she's sort of she has become depression Barbie essentially, or
Mm-hmm.
um, and feels like she isn't beautiful anymore. And there's an acknowledgement that even sort of I don't think she's wearing much makeup in that scene or anything, but even she's still Margot Robbie. I forget what exactly the voiceover says, but it's like, note to filmmakers, if you want to make this point, don't cast Margot Robbie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This acknowledgement that like, oh yeah, the line I'm not beautiful anymore doesn't work if you're Margot Robbie.
Sure. Yeah. Give it another 50 years.
But yeah,
Um.
I I think in 50 years she'll still look
uh,
better than
sure.
most people of that
Probably.
age. we'll bookmark that, and in 50
50
years we
years,
can
yeah.
revisit it. But she's just such good casting for Barbie.
Hmm.
Like, she just embodies, for stereotypical Barbie specifically.
Yeah, stereotypical Barbie. I can't think of anyone else currently who would play
Yeah,
her.
because yeah, she has those qualities that you need. Not only the look, but the comedic timing and the ability to play the sort of naivete.
Hmm.
And yeah, this is very much a Margot Robbie film. She's actually a producer on here, and she was actually cast before Greta Gerwig was brought on, and she's the one who asked Greta Gerwig to make the film.
Okay.
So she is very much an author here, in addition to being a star. So next up, we have America Ferrera as Gloria, who I thought she did phenomenal. She has this big monologue, which could very easily come off as preachy,
Yeah.
which I've heard people say that about it. That was not my experience of it. And again, my audience, when she finished her monologue, like, cheered and clapped. So for me and for my audience, apparently it worked. I've heard criticisms, but I don't quite buy it, because I thought she sold that and the emotion of it so well.
I think it could be a thing where people, if it has to be said in a monologue, then it's preachy.
Yeah,
So that's probably where that is coming from. Because they're probably expecting it to be a bit more subtle,
yeah.
but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm fine with the Greta Gerwig monologues. Those are. Sometimes I like when a movie is like, "Hey, let's lay this out." Makes it easier to interpret.
I was thinking uh towards the end. I was thinking towards the end where we're having a bunch of these monologues. Like, this is like Joker.
I don't think that is an incorrect comparison to make.
Right. It's like, okay, we're putting it straight. Joker had that monologue where before he shoots the guy. Here we got this monologue.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard people compare this to Joker, and I think there are other feminist films that fit that description better.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't think that's an unfair comparison to make,
Yeah. It was
even
just
though
the
I'm not
thing
the
that I
biggest
just kept
Joker
thinking
fan.
about. It's like, is this Joker?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Joker fan. I am, though, very much looking forward to Joker 2.
Sure. I like
I don't know what's going on there,
the
but
plot has nothing to do with Joker, but it's just like towards the end of the film, here's our big point. It's like, okay,
yeah.
I see.
Yeah, I think, to not to relitigate Joker, but I think the difference between this and Joker is that Joker is saying a lot without actually saying anything, whereas I think here Gerwig has a
Right.
handle on exactly what she's trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Like,
Whereas Joker
yeah,
is kind of just like saying a lot of stuff because it sounds good, but not necessarily with a specific message in mind.
which is part of the point. But yeah.
Yeah. So next up we have Rhea Perlman, who plays Ruth Handler, who, again, speaking of selling a monologue, I think she does really well.
Mm-hmm.
She has less emotion than America Ferrera did in her monologue, and I think that might be because I felt myself tuning out a little bit during the monologue, but it still hit me.
Sure. Yeah. It was kind of long.
Yeah, but it is also, it brings up these important ideas of motherhood and creation, and sort of watching both the people and the art that you create move beyond you. So yeah, I thought her performance, though, was pretty spectacular. And then I wanted to shout out a few more people who I think they're smaller roles, but did absolutely phenomenal. Michael Cera as Alan, that's just perfect casting. Like if you want that slightly awkward guy, you go with Michael Cera. Um, Kate McKinnon as Weird Barbie was hilarious. The way she's always in the splits, which I assume they had. I don't know if Kate McKinnon was doing all of those splits. Maybe she was. And then Will Ferrell is always fun. He's
Sure. Yeah.
kind of playing a very similar role to what he played in the Lego movie, but a little bit more comedic
He's
here.
just being Will Ferrell to me. So
Yeah. He was having a good time. I love the scene where they're all roller skating together with the entire board of Mattel.
mm-hmm.
And then yeah, there's a lot of smaller roles that also kind of stood out to me. Kingsley Benadier, who plays one of the Kens, he has some good sort of background acting moments. Issa Rae plays President Barbie, and she gets the strongest profanity of the movie, and that was another moment where the audience cheered. She gets the bleeped out F bomb.
I think that I'm wondering if that was a Mattel thing to add a
Yeah,
censor.
yeah. I'm not surprised they did because I think they do want this to appeal to, even though it's a PG-13, slightly edgier, but it's not like you could take a 10-year-old to this.
I don't know if they'd enjoy it
Yeah, but
because
you could.
the kids were kind of zoning out. Like
Yeah.
like they got used to all the pretty colors. It's like okay, all the messages is just gonna go way over their head. The things like haha, Ken was dancing and that was funny.
Yeah. I
It's
would hope that because this seems a type of movie that an engaged parent could have interesting conversations with their kid
in
afterwards.
10 years this is gonna be talked about a lot. I
Yeah.
think when the kids grow up and like, man, what this was in that movie? I don't remember that.
It'll be one of those like Barbie was secretly deeper than you thought it was, and it'll be like you go back 10 years and you're like, oh yeah, no, every critic in the world was picking up on these ideas, but since we were kids we weren't doing that.
Right? Yeah. Can't wait for those videos to come out.
I mean, it's better than the any art that was made before I was aware that art could be political is not political. Like the people who try to argue that like the Star Wars prequels, which are 90% about politics, are not political.
I mean, the original trilogy was like a commentary about the uh, Vietnam War.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But there are people who will try and argue, no, they made Star Wars political with X, Y, or Z. It's like, no, it's always been.
I mean, the difference is that one is more obvious than the other.
I think part of it is that we're just more grown up.
I mean, that's true, but it is also um, sometimes they're more on the nose, where
Yeah.
the other one's
The
like
the
very
prequels
subtle.
are very on the nose with the political stuff. I mean, half of it takes place in the Galactic Senate.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, um, also Cotter Swindles, who plays the intern at Mattel, like he's just got an interesting face, and he had some fun stuff to do in the background.
hmm
And then Alexandra Shipp plays journalist Barbie, who's the first one that gets deprogrammed, and she sells the comedic facial expressions she has to sell really well. She's you would know her. She plays Storm in the like X-Men Apocalypse.
I don't know if I'd know her from that.
Okay. Never mind then.
If it's not the other,
Not
if it's not Halle Berry, then
yeah.
like I wouldn't recognize.
Do Do you know what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else.
Yeah.
I like that line.
Yeah.
No one will ever trust my judgment on anything again now that I have said that.
I mean, I lost trust in your judgment years ago,
That's probably for the better.
but I'm still here.
So yeah, I gave the performances a 5 out of 5. I think they are really great across the board.
Yeah. I give it a 4 out of 5.
I hope Ryan Gosling at least gets some kind of Oscar nomination
Ryan, he's the standout,
for
really. He's the most memorable
I
part.
yeah, either for his performance, or speaking of our next category, music.
Okay.
Ken's song is just his "I'm Just Ken" song. It is fun.
So, all the original music I did not like.
Okay.
So when they're playing, I like the instrumental to them, but the actual songs when they're singing, I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
So like the first day we see in Barbie Land when it's being sung over by
Yes,
Lizzo.
yes. Take
Okay.
out Lizzo. I like the sound of it. The Ken thing, like, it went on far longer than I think it should have. I like the joke wore off on me really quickly.
Okay.
So
I was enjoying the sequence itself, even if
sure,
the song was a bit long in the tooth,
any dance sequence didn't really care about it
which is consistent with
with me.
how you felt about other Barbie movies, so that makes sense. I personally,
I enjoyed the
yeah.
score more than you did. I'd assume.
Now, with the song narration, did you enjoy it more the second time around, where it was sort of introducing the irrepressible thoughts of death element into it? Or did you not really?
Um, no,
Yeah,
no,
I liked a lot of these original songs, so I'm
I did
curious.
not care. The most atrocious one was the Barbie girl remake in the credits. Oh, that just sounded
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah. I am not a fan. I believe is that Nicki Minaj. Don't want to slander the wrong person. I'm not a big fan of her
I
music,
mean,
so it's not
I'll
my favorite
slander
song.
most musicians any day, but you know, I don't really like music that much.
Yeah,
Apparently,
I really liked specifically Dua Lipa's "Dance the Night," which I've been listening to since they released the track a while ago. This is the one that gets played when they're doing the big dance party,
yeah.
and it's
Well,
also in that one trailer.
I like the instrumentals, the
Okay,
'70s jazzy instrumentals. Was that what you're talking about?
I don't know. It's not really jazzy. It's more
If it's in,
disco.
yeah, disco. Sorry, those get mixed up. The disco. I like the disco sounding to it, but like take the lyrics, just didn't really do it for me.
Okay, I like the lyrics as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm also like for music. I have an issue where like a hearing issue where I have trouble distinguishing background and foreground noises. So for most music, I don't pay attention to the lyrics
Mm-hmm.
unless I've heard it enough.
I just don't like hearing songs.
Okay.
It, I don't know. I feel like we're just getting so much of it, and it's just not working for me.
So like the fact that it is not just a musical, but that the characters are not the ones singing it.
Right? Yeah. So like, if
Okay.
it's a musical, I can appreciate it more. So like, I appreciate Ken's things more because he's
Yeah.
actually part of that. But like, everything else, don't really care for it.
Yeah.
I just
I
feel like
like
there's an oversaturation of using music instead of actually creating music.
yeah, sort of a Guardians of the Galaxy. Though this is mostly original stuff.
Hmm.
for the
I
movie.
know, but still,
Yeah,
different styles of music. I'm more score based than
yeah.
song.
Now I think my favorite musical moment, not my favorite song of the film, but I've already talked about it before. The when Ken says he's going to play the guitar at Barbie, not he's going to play the guitar for her, but at her, as if it's sort of like an attack, um, and starts playing "Push" by Matchbox 20. Just the perfect choice of song that is just like, I don't know much about this song, but I've heard it a couple times, and immediately when you hear it, you know exactly why this is terrible that he's playing this for her.
Yeah,
Because
I
like
get I get the
you know that
messaging,
kind
but
of person.
it's a cover, and I'm like, it's a cover. Okay,
Yeah, but that's the point of it.
I know.
Because it's like that guy that everyone knows, that it's like he has a guitar and he like knows two songs and he always plays them for everyone.
Well, the people that I know with the card, they create music. They don't.
Okay.
So, I mean,
But you get the like the stereotypical
no,
like,
I get that. I see it all the time in films.
yeah.
Whenever they go to the colleges, there's always just that group just sitting in the grass, with the
Well,
guitar.
those are the hippies.
Oh
They're fine.
yeah.
This is more of the like the guy who places all of his worth in his ability to play one song on
Hmm.
the guitar and thinks that it is like a personality trait that is attractive to people.
I mean, my trait is in middle school was that I can eat 4 slices of pizza.
You see,
Very
that's
impressive.
I think it's more impressive than playing Push by Matchbox 20 on the guitar.
In 2 minutes.
Yeah, for me the score was a little less impressive, but I didn't dislike it.
Hmm.
I just didn't really notice it. Yeah. So overall I gave the music a 4.5 out of 5.
And I gave it a 3.
Yeah, that leaves my final score at a 23.3 out of 25, or a 93.2%, which is a 4.66 on our 5-star scale.
Yeah, which is my score is a 17.5, which is 70%, or 3.55 star rating. My initial reaction outside the theater was a 3.5, but after sitting on it, I brought it down to a 3. I think 3.3 is where I'm at, but like 3 is where we're at. So
That's what we're sticking with for now.
I mean,
Maybe
just give it
we'll,
more time. Maybe it'll
yeah.
go back up a half point. Honestly, it's back and forth depending on
Yeah.
my mood.
Yeah, I am curious to rewatch it and see what sticks out and what.
I mean,
Now
as
that
soon
cuz
as I left the film, I'm like, can I rewatch this? Is it one of those movies that I feel like I can? I don't know if it works as well. I think the novelty wears off
okay.
of the whole Barbie Land. It would wear off. I mean,
Yeah, you see,
the idea wore off once we saw the
yeah.
trailers.
Yeah. You see, my question is, going back and knowing more what to expect and where it's going to end up, if it's easier to keep track of the arcs and the ideas,
Yeah,
or if maybe without that novelty it kind of falls apart,
that's who
which
I
could
feel
be
about
either.
Oppenheimer and
Okay.
rewatch. In Nolan in general, you want to rewatch because that makes more sense. You understand what he's doing. But we'll talk about Nolan another time.
Yeah. So yeah, our final average score here is a 20.4 out of 25, or an 81.6%, or a 4.08 on our 5-star scale, which leaves this at the if we are putting this in our Barbie rankings, which is a little bit unfair because we weren't grading this on the same curve. But for me, it ends up number 2, right after Princess and the Pauper. John,
Mm-hmm.
for you, it ends up number 20.
Well,
So halfway down your list between Mariposa and Big Babysitting Adventure.
I thought that'd be the case. Yeah, because I enjoy a lot of those films. I'd rewatch those films more than rewatch this probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. On our overall list, it's sitting at number 7, right behind Rapunzel
Mm-hmm.
and right above
It's
Polar
kind of
Princess.
sad that like we watched all of these films, but it really has there's really nothing in these films to prepare us for this. It was just the only thing that was worth was watching a documentary, like the toys that made us, and we didn't even do an episode on that. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, Barbie in the Dream House is the closest one because
Yeah,
it's
Dreamhouse Adventures
no.
or
Life in the Dream
Life in
House.
the Dream House. And someday I'll get the 2 correct.
Yeah, that's the closest thing that's connected because they're both in like a toyland.
Yeah.
But still, I don't know. I feel kind of sad that this whole year was like for nothing.
Yeah, I had enough fun watching the animated Barbie movies. I do kind of wish there was something more to connect them, but I like this one.
I mean, I love this past year of watching all the films, but man, it's a real bummer that like there's like no connection between the two. They're like two separate things. It's like, huh?
Yeah. I am curious to see if now the animated films start to pivot to be more like this or if they continue on the path that they're already on.
I mean, hopefully people will be listening more to the podcast now that the film has come out. They're all Barbified.
Yep.
We'll
Oh,
see.
I did want a quick mention on our glimpsing Greta scale. This ends up right. It's the second to last one here, behind Little Women and right in front of Nights and Weekends. Which honestly, yeah, I or sorry, right behind Lady Bird and right in front of Nights and Weekends, which I think is actually kind of where I would rank it. Even though for me, that's like we're talking about a lot of films that I really like, and then one that I don't care for quite as much.
Mhm.
But yeah, just I had a fascinating time watching this. I enjoyed it a lot. Sounds like you didn't have the same experience, which, yep.
I mean, I mean, whatever. You know,
Yep. It is what it is.
it is what it is, and we've come to the end of this road,
Yep.
or have we?
Well, that's the question. Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are Binging Barbie Podcast on Instagram, at Binging Barbie on Twitter, and Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd. And yeah, as Jad has been hinting at, we may have something in the works here, but for the time being, you can go probably right now because I won't release it too much later in the day. Today, we are releasing our review of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's Barbenheimer weekend,
Yeah.
baby.
On the Thursday after, but
Yes.
took a bit of time to maybe I'll release this a few days early.
I mean, we'll see.
We'll see. It's a really interesting having seen both of them that it was such a meme,
Yes.
which we'll have to talk a bit about in our Oppenheimer review.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, anyway, thank you all for listening and see you very soon. Bye. Bye, Barbie.
Bye, Barbie. Bye,
Bye,
Barbie.
Barbie.
Bye, Barbie. Bye,